Hey guys, Tyler 2K here. I know people wanted to see a tier list, so I figured I might as well make a tier list. I haven't done an updated tier list since, uh, season 2 was posted. I had a season 3 one I was working on for, about 6 hours doing apples to apples comparisons, making our way down the list, and unfortunately, I forgot to save the VODs, and they got deleted on Twitch. So I never posted one for S3. So here's the S4 final tier list. They're back in discussion, so I figure it's probably time to talk about it. Hopefully, I'll do this somewhat quick. I'm not going to go completely over everything one by one, and I'm not even going to publicize this one. I'm going to post to the channel, sort of thing. But yeah, let's just quickly talk about how the tiers just work in S4, technically ever since S2, and go from there. And then keep in mind, unless specified, the tiers are unordered. So a tier on the left, a person on the left of a single tier, will essentially be roughly the same strength as someone on the far right of the tier. Like I said, unless specified. So first things first, talking about God tier characters. Simply put, God tier characters are characters that in T7 specifically force your opponent to play their game. In previous games, there was like maybe one mechanic per top tier character that would, kind of change the meta and force people to play their own game. This game, though, specifically T7, has a lot of characters who fundamentally break the game. One great example is Akuma. Having both a counter hit, 10 frame low, which keep in mind, Geese had lost, and we can go ahead and throw Geese on here as well because he's still meta-defining character, and I am completely blind. There he is. Yeah, having a 10-frame counter hit S-mid is insane. Very easy to hit confirm both down back 1-2 into Fireball, down back 1-2 into Tatsu, so on and so forth. Super strong. EXDP is really important in order to completely blow up matchups. Hell, even without meter, Kuma can blow up a matchup by mashing heavy Dragon Punch DP, which is 8-frame activation for invulnerability. So, for instance, in the Leo matchup against Akuma, Leo can't push any pressure. It's kind of similar to how Claudio players will go for Rage Drive, and if you have a right punch parry, you can kind of blow him up. Imagine that, except for many matchups. Both the ability to jump over mids while having the 2D jump and being able to full convert into a combo is completely meta-defining, insanely strong. Geese is basically an easier Kuma while not being quite as strong. But execution-wise, he can still do 80% combos fairly easily. Me, myself, not being a Geese player, I play him on the side, have him up to Fujin, not very high. He's super easy. I can do 70% combos easily if you have both the game knowledge and game sense to be able to maximize his combo potential while effectively using meter. You can find yourself in situations where you go from losing to winning instantly, and then having, like, for instance, a ground throw that can't be escaped. Incredibly strong. Okay, other meta-defining characters who completely change things. First one that comes to mind is Leroy, having back 2 that activates on frame 2, up forward 3 that activates on, or forward 1, sorry, that activates on frame 3. Same thing, completely blows up people's pressure options. While Hermit Stance is a little bit not great against players who are decently good at the game, the ability to completely break momentum while at the same time being safe is incredible. Like, for instance, with Jin, and we can go ahead and throw Jin. Jin has the old school meta-defining, parry, where you can blow up pressure. For instance, if you incorrectly parry and then go for something simple like a 2-4 for a wall splat on 10 frame, if they recover quick enough, they can launch Punisher parry 2-4. With Leroy, if you parry and do the auto attack, the 1+2 or 1-2, whatever it is, it's safe on block. Now, granted, it is high, so if by some miracle they're able to space it out, you could technically punish it, but just the ability to mash out an input in almost every single situation is incredibly strong. Obviously, he's a shell of himself. He's no longer the top 6 of 8 Evo Japan, but he's still strong nonetheless. Having tools like down 3-2 into the okay hermit stance is once again meta defining, and he's a very strong character. If you don't know what you're doing, you will completely get dominated by his neutral game, and not to mention he has that cane for basically a free rage drive. You think your opponent's going to low parry or maybe throw out a reversal or some sort of sabaki, just throw a cane out. There you go, 70% damage with a wall, basically, completely for free, safe on block. Very strong. Another meta-defining character, really can't talk about him without, mentioning without talking about him, Fahkumram. Very strong, having the ability to do a guard crush is incredibly strong. Compare his guard crush versus someone like Gigas' guard crush, where you just get frames and a mix-up. Fahkumram basically gets a full combo. The good thing, in his defense, is that the combo scaling is reduced versus someone like Gigas who gets full scaling. But just the fact that if you take the incoming initial hit, the guard crush becomes suddenly like 10 times more dangerous. It's very strange, the dynamic with playing Fahkumram, who has both these incredibly strong strings, but at the same time, the variance on the strings is what makes a good Fahkumram player versus a great Fahkumram player. But his neutral tools are extremely strong. 3+4 is a solid mid that if most characters would be instantly jump up a tier. There's a few faults in his gameplay, but for the most part, he's extremely strong. The best thing you can do against Fahkumram is, micro-stepping and just very strong counter-hit tools. Speaking of very strong counter-hit tools in our quest for god-tier characters, you can't talk about that without talking about Julia. Magic 4 on 11, basically a -14 111, which has great frame data, period. Compare Julia's 111 versus like a Lars 111, and you can see glimmers of what a god-tier character is versus a normal tier character. Also, she has an incredible command throw game, extremely strong tools like 4/4 1+2, which still has not been nerfed for a safe wall splat. She's the queen of wall splat. Safe options such as wall stand 3, and less safe options such as bow and arrow for wall pressure, setting up a 4/4-3, guaranteeing very other combos, like for instance wall splat 4/4-1, hop kick option into the stomp, and so on and so forth. She is a total package character. She would probably be the best character in game if you didn't have a character like a 2D Akuma or Geese. But yeah, Julia is extremely strong. I highly recommend playing her. Okay, while I don't see anyone immediately else god tier, what meta defining, I should say, there are definitely other characters that strong. Let's go ahead and talk about the opposite side of the spectrum. Eddy is a character who has gotten significant buffs in Season 4, but he still has the problem where certain characters completely trounce his offense and defensive options. For instance, if you play against Eddy and you have a character who doesn't have a particularly strong, ground hitting option, let's say Heihachi, I'm just spitballing here. You get like a down 1. Okay, Eddy transitions to HSP or relax, you down 1. Easy peasy. Okay, Eddy loses his churn, you're now positive as Heihachi. Compare that versus Eddy versus Nina or Anna or Claudio, who as soon as he transitions into HSP gets launched. The ability to not effectively put offense in is completely trouncing. So you get these problems where you are forced into very bad situations in certain matchups and you just completely lose. Like I mentioned, even though you don't get a launch with Heihachi, just having a tool such as strong as like down 1 to completely interrupt anything makes life very difficult for Eddy. His damage is still kind of lackluster. You got the nice buffs of back 2 through 3, but for the most part, the ability to be hunted by mid-tier characters, not even talking about top-tier characters, keeps a character like Eddy naturally low. We can make the same argument for Chloe. Chloe, while has the god-tier damage of a god-tier character, is still lacking in everything else. Poor tracking, although back 3 helps out tremendously. Certain characters, same thing, can OS options such as Cali roll. So as soon as she drops into Cali roll, regardless of her completing the string or not completing the string, she just gets beat. Certain characters get a full launch. Certain characters just get a natural OS that deals a ton of damage. That's about it. Chloe is fun. Same thing. I highly recommend playing her like Julia. But you get to a point where it's just like, I just can't do anything else. Similarly, because this tier list, of course, is regarding for like top tier players and players who, in my definition, makes a 95% accuracy rate, roughly. Similar thing with Panda and Kuma, bears basically. On paper, like in a very basic level, bears are good. Having the old style forward 1, 10 frames similar to Julia, 1-1 or forward 1 in this case. A Chief Clef Cannon is great. Decent carry, good damage, decent Oki. But once you start looking at their frame data and similarly have characters with very good option selects, Bear really falls apart. Like, if you've never looked at the Bear frame data, I can't properly explain to you how punishable they actually are. Even less obvious things like HSB down forward 2, the big launch, okay, -17, -18 probably. Okay, sure, you might understand that. But have you ever seen forward roll 2 and stuff like that? I mean, there are so many -15 and worse options, not to mention they get stuck in stance, that you're forced at a high level to completely play boring and or safe. They have decent pokes, but the follow-up options are non-existent. And then let's say, okay, you start breaking down mentally. You start hitting these buttons that just get you blown up. So while they might have the best one, arguably top 2, top 3 power crush in the game with back 1, that's about it. Forward 1 and back 1 are really strong tools, but strong tools in overall don't make a character strong in general. And in this case, actually make them pretty poor. Let's see. Who other characters completely get trounced? I don't see any immediately. So let's go ahead and start filling out the middle of the pack. Dragunov is like the most definite middle character ever made. Someone on Reddit had made a post, and I love it. They basically say it doesn't matter what tier list it is, being a joke tier list or a real tier list. You can always find Dragunov in this normal same spot, and that is true. Dragunov is what an old school T7 character really strives to be, like a season 1 before. Very basic, consistent. But in a season 2 and after world where we now have significantly god tier characters, he just kind of falls apart. The one thing that Dragunov really needs, and this is not going to be a Dragunov rant, he just needs consistency. A lot of his mids just don't hit certain characters. For instance, if you were to do running 2 at +6 against Chloe, if she mashes up 3, she basically just wins. There's nothing you can do to hit her as Dragunov. Little things like that. It's very strange. Basically, these turn-stealing moves have such great evasion, and he still has such poor mids that you really can't hit anyone. Let's talk about, in a similar vein, new school characters who are now significantly better. So T6 Bob was everyone's favorite character to hate, and he kind of fell out of favor. And I had talked about originally, previous to all these like Mishima buffs, how Bob was the best Mishima in the game if he had an electric. Without electric, by far his neutral game's better. All his tools are better than Mishima's, like season 2 and before. But as soon as they started buffing electric for all the Mishimas and creating these insane hitboxes, Bob fell out of favor. Similarly, because he got left behind. That was until season 3, where they gave him his crouch dash 1, a non-electric electric. And unlike other Mishima wave dash options, his, while high, still is at least safe on block, allowing him to keep up pressure with such strong tools such as backsway, a high crush naturally options, an incredible power crush, arguably best power crush in the game. Bob is pretty much the total package. Anytime you think like you're falling into a trap with Bob, like playing as Bob, there is some tool whether esoteric, to be found. Just the ability to have like this wide breadth of options is incredibly strong, and just the natural mix-up potential for quite a few of his strings. Like, for instance, if you talk about like his old Cracker Jacker of forward 1, the mix-up was basically you can hit confirm Cracker Jacker, which is launch punishable block, but if you confirm it and don't commit to it, it's like minus 13. And that still is the case. The problem now is that Cracker Jacker has the 4 extension, which is essentially a jailing string. So if you try to mash out, you get hit. Obviously, you can duck it, so it's technically not jailing. But I mean in the fact it's a counter hit jailing trap. Similarly, he can go single Cracker Jacker into forward roll or backward roll. So immediately you go from this, is he going to do it or is he not going to do it, to a, is he going to do it or is he going to do a 3-way mix-up? And it's pretty disgusting. Certain characters have better options than others. But for the most part, yeah, it's insane how much stronger Bob is. And you know what? While we're talking about Mishimas in general, we can just throw the rest on the stack. You can make the argument, definitely Kazuya. Not much to talk about him. 50-50 God. New strong tools. 4/4 is incredible. Down 1+2 is incredible. Wall stand 1+2 is incredible. He's gotten all these safer options to both give him scary counter hit tools as well as safe wall splat options, similar to Julia Wall Stand 3. And he's much more of a total package character. Devil Jin, while not being a meta-defining character necessarily, arguably still God tier. Invisible execution, good damage potential. Anytime there is a ground break, and thank God there's only like 2 stages with ground breaks in them. Anytime ground break is on the table, he gets ability to instantly kill you. That's something not very many characters can say. You guess once wrong against Mishima or against Devil Jin, you lose 50-70% of your health. You guess wrong on the Oki option, similar to like a T6 Bryan, you lose. How many characters can say that? Very strong, very scary. They have dealt with his deficiencies well, and have essentially reverted all his nerfs that were in T7. So now we have this essentially God tier Devil Jin who is able to do whatever he kind of wants, and he still has the incredible up 4. Similar to Akuma, can just blow up certain pressure options for free. Certain characters can't necessarily punish it very well either. Very scary stuff. Most characters can, but if you can't, your character doesn't have that ability, oh well. sorry to say that. Yeah, I would say Heihachi is probably right in between A and S. Heihachi's nowhere near as powerful as like Jin or Kazuya, but the amount of buffs that he's received in S4 especially is incredible. Better hitbox on down forward 1, better hitbox or better frame data on forward 3, better frame data on 1 back 2. Incredible hitbox with both the jabs, where he essentially has jab range now for like a Jack or a Marduk, while just these constant buffs of just weird decisions. For instance, going into Hell Sweep 4, neutral Tsunami Kick is now only minus 14. Hell Sweep and or natural Tsunami Kick ending on hit is +0/+0s. So that means if your opponent mashes out and you have rage, you can hit confirm 1 back 2 rage drive. What the fuck? Like, while granted, once again, this is for the top tier, in which case, Heihachi is in between. If you're looking at him from any other perspective, if you don't know these changes, you will completely get destroyed. So there's a million and one things to talk about Heihachi, and I'm not going to talk about it here. But yeah, he is between A and S. But for now, I'm just going to go ahead and throw him on S tier because he's probably more S than A, but definitely nowhere near as good as the other Mishimas. We can talk about, we were just talking about him, Marduk. Is he a God tier character? You can make the argument that he is, but at the same time, I think the other God tiers, and this is where the God tier becomes its own tier, really prey on those beneath them. Marduk simply does fall apart against the other God tiers who have both the evasion and just general frame data to blow him up. Same thing to Heihachi. He's probably right between God and S, but to put him outright on God tier is a little disingenuous, simply because while, as God tier, once again, they prey on everyone beneath them, Marduk preys on everyone beneath them, but at the same time, he doesn't quite hold up against the other God tier characters. Yeah, I'm sure this will probably be the most controversial pick I have here, controversial, but I would put him, if anything, or I said order doesn't matter, I would say high S once again, and then, Heihachi is in between, so he's low S, but everyone else is roughly the same. So, yeah, it's hard to push him to the next tier, but he's pretty damn close. Jack, I would say the more I play Jack, the less I like him. He has this issue where his frame data is basically non-conducive to doing anything. Simply put, like options like 2-1 being +3 when he doesn't have any sort of decent range 13 really hurts. Like down forward 1, for instance, is +4. So I can't tell you how many times you simply get blown up by trying to push at like +3. He kind of has that issue where you have to treat his forward 2 like an electric, but at the same time, he doesn't have the benefit of the electric being a natural hit counter hit tool. Like for instance, and I'm for the love of God, I'm not saying do this, but if forward 2 was like a natural hit knockdown, guaranteeing the 4-4-4, yeah, Jack would be significantly scarier. But as it is, it's like, okay, my opponent is going to disrespect me. Forward 2. Your opponent's like, you know what? I think Jack is going to hit forward 2, and then you lose. Little things like that. I have total respect for like Jack players. Same thing. I would probably put him between B and bad, but I can't quite throw him into the bad tier directly. It's a little bit too hard because he does have his own decent matchups. He definitely has bad matchups, but it's a little bit too difficult to throw him down there. Gigas, on the other hand, same thing, a little bit between A and B, but I think Gigas is significantly stronger with the Season 3 and Season 4 buffs. Just the ability to have a counter hit launching tool is pretty nice. That also allows for pressure. Little weird kind of buffs like 2-1 transitioning into ready stance versus, which being completely safe on block jailing, versus a similar tool with like Marduk 2-1 is like really weird decision making. It's strange that they buff like these identity tools for Gigas and for quite a few of these characters, but at the same time leave the issues that he has. But the meta defining tools they chose are like so, how do I put it? I wouldn't quite say oppressive, but essentially oppressive. It very weird. So between A and B would probably be Gigas. Gigas is definitely better than Jack. Middle of the road nowadays, some good matchups, a lot of bad matchups, but very scary in the hands of an expert for sure. Yeah, if we have Heihachi on bottom S, I think Armor King deserves to be up here as well. Armor King, same thing, significant buffs in Season 4, very scary throw game. He's actually one of the few characters in the game with a essentially wall splat launching throw. If you do the 1+2 throw with the wall to your front, that will guarantee a balcony break and wall break, so on and so forth. And also he has other options such as DDT, GS, guaranteeing follow-up hits. Very scary. Down forward 2 is incredible. Just the fact that down forward 2 seems to inconsistently push so far away is super annoying to go against, and also have a very strong homing knockdown tool. Similar vein to King down forward 2, which also essentially tracks, even though it doesn't have homing properties. But King's a little bit stronger with down forward 1-2 or down forward 2-1. Sorry. 13 frame versus Armor King's 15 frame down forward 2. Similar tools, but very different purposes. Very nice that you get the consistent hit, very low hitbox. Other tools such as 4-4 neutral 2, back 4 being buffed. The one real buff that I particularly don't like is that he used to have a bunch of -10 options, and then Namco decided to get rid of them. Wall stand 2 being a counter hit -9 mid is honestly insulting if you play any of the other cast. 4-4-2, little things like that. He has quite a few of them. Key things such as 4-4-4 are still -14, but he has such this breadth of options to hit you with and kind of continue pressure. Decent throw game, decent long range game, buffed range. The buff to wall stand 1 is pretty nice too. Getting that consistent long range launcher. Yeah, they've done work. Once again, a little bit closer to between A and S, but I would still put him up there. Paul's obviously in this discussion. I think it's easy to put him in S tier. I don't think anyone would ever doubt that. Generic down forward 2 is such an incredible tool. And while a lot of characters don't have a generic down forward 2 anymore, Paul still has like the goated down forward 2. Also, the fact that his rage drive not only can be canceled, but also reset scaling is ludicrous. First time I found that out, I couldn't believe it. Like, how the hell? It's like, why did it do so much damage? And it's like, oh, it resets to scaling. Okay. So that means like options like low parry, airborne hits aren't to be feared because you essentially reset the scaling in your favor. Very strange decisions. Sidestep 3, counter hit, plus 12. Iron Mountain, strong options such as back 1-2, which even though is a mid, is a high, essentially hits mid. Opposite problem is Dragunov, who has mids that hit high. But very strong. Not much to talk about him. I don't think I need to talk about Paul. He's strong. He's not a god tier character, but he's strong nonetheless. Speaking of which, Steve, I would put him probably in between. Meta defining, it's hard to say. His damage output is insane, but comparing his back 1, which has been nerfed and is I-13, versus quite a few of these other characters' tools, not quite. So I would say similar to Marduk, between God and S, very good, but at the same time, he isn't the meta defining god tier that other characters, in the god tier properly present. He's still good though. The ability to do 40% on like all his launchers is great. There have been a few nerfs to him. Obviously, down forward 2 immediately comes to mind. In which case, if he still had his old down forward 2 and had a few of his safer options back, yeah, probably god tier. But I mean, he's perfectly fine character. Like, what's the problem with playing Steve? Yeah, you want to play Steve, you want to win. Congratulations, there's Steve. Good damage, decent carry, good pressure, good wall game. Steve is pretty much a total package. Speaking of which, Raven. I'm glad Raven is on the discussion of being a top 15 character nowadays. Raven, very strong. Same thing, not quite meta defining, but she has quite a few tools that allow her to essentially poke her way in and be scary. Little buffs like a 2-4 being a consistent 10 frame, while at the same time now jailing makes her significantly scary. 1-1-4 giving her like a Dragunov 1-2-1, but with a built-in mix-up, and at the same time giving you this nasty damage and wall splat and pressure. And same thing, you can't talk about Raven without talking about her walled game. One of the best wall games in the game, period. Super scary. One wrong mistake will get you blown up. She has a few bad matchups, but at the same time, I would say Raven's easily better than 80-90% of the cast and very consistent. At that tip-top level, she is terrifying, honestly. Very scary character to play against. Talking about ninjas, you know what? We can go ahead and throw Kuni up here. I would say Kuni is meta defining. A tool. So first things first with Kunimitsu. She is the smallest character in the game. And I wouldn't say by far. She's just a little bit smaller than Lucky Chloe. Yet, because she carries weapons, she has probably middle of the road and or high distance of punishment, of options, period. She both does advancing attacks as well as uses her weapon to gain extra range. So despite the fact that she is the smallest character in the game, she has punishers that hit at Jack range, Gigas range. I don't understand. Back 2 is still not nerfed, is a homing power crush, spin option, wall splat, good damage, everything. She has one of the best backdash in the game. AppPlay had made a video on Twitter, I think yesterday or the day before, showing how you don't have to do KBD, which I've been saying all the time. You just have to do a single backdash for most matchups. Kuni is the god of single backdash. She does a single backdash, down forward 2. Her down forward 2 is always in range. Other options like a grounded, unscaled hits, 14 frame dragon punch, full launcher, her kunai, which can essentially be made safe, unlike Noctis forward 2 kunai, which if you space it incorrectly, can get you blown up. Just the fact that Kuni's is minus 11, and if at tip range, is essentially safe on block and sets up people making mistakes. Other strong tools, 2-2 is insanely overtuned. Like I said, down for 2, I think it's only minus 12 despite having God range. It's very strange. Double hop kick. I mean, you can just go on and on with this character. Kuni is very meta defining and scary. Great matchups, and is basically at heart a T7 character. I mean, there's not much more to talk about other than that. In the similar vein, talking about Noctis, I think Noctis is probably middle of the road. He's probably a little bit closer between like B and A, but his buffs have been pretty good. He's also one of the few characters in the game, with his down forward 2, who essentially hunts certain characters. So Noctis versus Paul has to play out of his mind. He has to play scared, honestly. Just the fact that pushback is not a thing for Noctis is incredible. He does have some issues, and that's probably why he's not higher. For instance, I don't know why 122, his 10 frame Punisher, is still +1. Compare his 122 versus Feng's not on here yet. Feng 122, which got buffed to +3. Mishima 122, which is +4. Yeah, it's kind of strange. I don't understand. With that being said, good damage. Good. He's one of the few characters who can OTG, off the ground hit. So if your opponent stays on the ground, you get a full launcher. One of the few characters who can still do that, or can do that rather. He's has issues, but at the same time, he's still decent. Also, he's pretty fun to play. I highly recommend. Same thing. I recommend it. Down 2 being +0. Decently tracking low. That can't be low, period, because it's a weapon. Similarly meta defining, but at the same time, that's about it. Shaheen. I think Shaheen's pretty middle of the road. Probably a little bit closer with these 4, or these 3 rather, to S. But I think once we start throwing more people in A, he'll be more like middle there. Generic down forward 2, great hop kick. His pressure game is a little bit lacking. His real pressure game is basically just his evasion and movement in general. Getting your opponent to whiff and then punishing them with very long range tools. Having a 14 frame hit and permal down back 2 is great range to it. Even as little as I like it, a tool like back 2 being a trading counter hit launching option is pretty cool. Nothing too much to talk about Shaheen. He's very fun to play, but at the same time very basic. Who sounds like another character I know, which is probably Leo. Leo very basic, very boring. Significant season 4 buffs, but at the same time, not much kind of going for her. As I had mentioned, the ability to do back 1-4 into K&K is strong and scary in certain matchups. But not only are there characters who can just blow up the OS, but there are characters who can just step left. For that reason alone, if you talk about this like very scary tool that doesn't work on like half the cast, can you really call them a scary character? Her lows, her scary lows rather, are all seeable. Her chipping lows aren't really much to talk about. QCF1 counter hit, guaranteeing the wall stand for 1+2 is nice, but that's about it. Full crouch down 4-3 now being a neutral hop kick rather than -14. Down 4 2+3 being seeable, down back 4 being seeable. Yeah, she's only scary in K&K, but if your opponent knows what to do, and once again, this is a high tier, like you're high to play tier list, she unfortunately kind of falls apart. Same thing goes for a character like Katarina. I don't think Katarina is quite bottom of the barrel, but she has gotten so many buffs and has great damage, great potential, that I would say worse than Leo, worse than Jack. But at the same time, I think I'd rather have Katarina than like an Eddy to play with. Obviously, major weakness being like Harrier doesn't track sidestep right, for your opponent. Completely screws up your game plan in quite a few situations. But just the fact that so many things transition into Harrier makes it basically scary. If we're talking about like season 2 and before Katarina with like half the transitions, sure, okay, bad for sure. Season 3 and after Katarina, a little bit scarier. And that's not even discounting, or that is, people discount the strength of tools like 4424, down 2 being a gigantic hitbox. I've talked about this on my stream, but just the fact that like big characters have to respect down 2 really hurt. It really, really hurts. Man, like she is so close to being an incredibly strong character. And while she has glaring faults, I just can't put her into bad tier. She's like 2 buffs away from being like mid tier or high tier for sure. Yeah, down 4-4, for instance. Very, very, very good shit. Okay. Let's talk about other characters. 2 buffs away, let's say, from being really good. Yeah, I think Lars probably fits that bill. I would probably put Lars between B and A. Not as consistent as these 4, and once again, you can make an argument for Noctis. Let's put Noctis lower than these, but I would say Lars is in this conversation. Obviously, the big glaring weakness is his tracking to his left or opponent sidestep right. Just the fact that he still doesn't have anything to discourage it really hurts. People will say like, oh yeah, what about back 1? And we've talked about this before on the Lars tutorial thing. Back 1 is nice. It doesn't do anything on counter hit unless you're by a wall, in which case your opponent might not be trying to step anyway. And hitting a button, I should say. But +4 on back 1. So as soon as you do back 1, unlike these other characters who can do a homing move into a homing move, back 1 kind of gives up your turn. You're then forced to use a faster tool like shoulder to stop step, 1-1 hit confirm if you think they're going to mash a button, down forward 1 check, which then gets blown up the sidestep right again. And you can find these like very blatant frame data issues where like Namco, while slightly buffing him, has left very glaring issues in his offense. And yeah, if you have a god tier character with like significantly good sidestep or ability to like negate churns, Lars just kind of falls apart. Now this would be different if he still had his old Tekken Tag 2 down 4-2, and while FC down 4-2, is nice. Just the fact that you're essentially taking 6+ frames to get access to like a 15 frame tool that a lot of other characters kind of have, fucking sucks. And while his like low game gives these conducive frames, yeah, he loses his churn by going for these options. Like, let's say your opponent knows that down back 4 is +6 and down forward 2 off FC is then 15, so can't be interrupted. So you go for down forward 2. You're now -9. Not only if they get hit, I think you're only +5, but it's like your churn is over. Okay, so let's say I know my opponent's going to stay standing, so I'm going to go for Shoe Shine. You're now +1. Congratulations, you're doing a shittier low than a character like Alisa Shoe Shine, who has 1,000,000,001 properties, and we'll get to her later. Yeah, he's still lacking in these tools. If an option like back 1 was just +5 rather than +4, he would be significantly scarier. If his lows weren't seeable, he'd be significantly scarier. If he had, like, if down 3 or down back 1, this is my favorite example. Down back 1 -1, sorry, on hit. If you commit to down back 1-3, you're now +1, which then guarantees wall stand 4, so on and so forth, right? They try to do anything. But a single down back 4, which is arguably his best low that's not launch punishable, is -1. Same thing, you give up your churn. If you were just to make down back 1 +1 or +0, there you go. All these problems kind of naturally resolve themselves. He is, once again, just a few buffs away from being a scary character, but I really can't give Lars any respect, and it's a shame. Yoshimitsu, talking about respect, is a character who I would say has gotten buffs, significant buffs. The wall damage being super guaranteed, ending with whatever 3 slide 4 into Dragonfly 4 or whatever it is nice. I mean, that's something he was missing. Now, granted, of course, he's the god of Oki and setups and stuff like that, but sometimes you just need to get damage. Season 4, and I think that was Season 4, I don't think that was Season 3 buff, is such a change. Significantly good. Weird frame data choices like down forward 1+2, 1+2, the low into mid, now being like -12, I think it is, instead of -15 is huge. Crouch dash 2 is, high crushing long range mid, being -13 instead of -14 is weird. Little changes like that. Back 2-2, going from Tech Attack 2 to T7 went from -14 to -12. There are these like frames that are conducive to doing flash, to doing setups, and if you're creative enough with Yoshi, you can excel with them. Of course, against someone who's experienced, and if your setups are kind of whack, he falls apart quickly, but he's still damn scary. A high-level Yoshimitsu will cause you to constantly guess, which is exactly how he's designed. So for that reason alone, he's a well-designed T7 character. Excuse me. Not necessarily meta-defining, and probably similar to Marduk and Steve, is right between God tier and S tier. Feng comes to mind. Feng has been, so many buffs, so many changes. Just the down back 3 being a counter hit mix-up. Okay, first of all, down back 3 is an attack throw, right? So it's naturally strong. It's power crush. So if they do power crush, you do down back 3, which also, high crushes. You do a ton of damage, but then you get the Oki to go with it. Like I had mentioned, buffs like 1-2-2 being +3. Back 1 is still a great tool. The damage potential addition from changes such as, down forward 4-3 is great. The punch parry buffs, God, there's so much to talk about with this character. Just too much to talk about. Wall stand 1-2 being, I think it's like it's something good. It's like +4, +5. It's, wow. Like, he has gone from like this middle of the road, like lower mid-tier character to like high mid-tier, basically over the course of a night. There's just so much to talk about. He's one of the few characters, I would say, if you have vanilla T7, to start as a beginner, Paul and Feng, with Feng being arguably better now that he's gotten so many buffs. He does have a few glaring weaknesses in his neutral game. But for the most part, he is still scary. Once you're forced to play Feng's game like a god tier, yeah, that's where he starts chipping away at you. And he's terrifying. Speaking of terrifying, um, I would say King also fits that bill. King has gotten some significant buffs and some significantly weird changes, like back three guaranteeing the butt stomp. Now having a consistent I-14 Punisher with back 2-1, and I would say King is definitely better. He's probably between S and A, and keep in mind these three are between God and S, so it's a little bit skewed this thing. But yeah, King is the total package. Not only does he still have his incredibly strong chain throw game, but he has these other little improvements that completely improve his like quality of life. Manual combos now are a little bit scarier with him. He still has the great double jab into 4-4-1 for ultra long carry, delay forward 2-1 for ultra long carry. He is one of the few characters who not only can get you to the wall and be scary at the wall, but even open field be also pretty scary. He, I would say, falls apart as just like a side character, but a King main is definitely nothing to trifle with, let's say. Very scary if you're going against King main. Speaking of scary mains, yeah, I mean, not Josie, sorry, Ling Xiaoyu comes immediately to mind as a scary main. Such strong tools, such as standing 3 being her 14 frame, 1 button launcher, is great. Little stupid things like wall stand 4 guaranteeing 4-4-3 if they don't tech correctly, and or sets up Oki, an incredibly dangerous rage drive, the ability to crouch in AOP and essentially blow up a lot of mids. Her damage potential is pretty good nowadays. Weird buffs. This isn't specific to like season 4, but like T7 in general, like down 4-2, slide 1, being incredible range, incredible damage, while still only not very punishable relative to like quite a few other people's tools. Yeah, she's good. Of course, she's a shell of her like 7.0 days where she would guarantee like a bunch of strings, like you know, tech traps and stuff like that. But she's still one of the few characters with a wall infinite with her deep step, hypnotizer step left into down 4-2, slide 1, infinite. Yeah, her and Alisa, and I can go ahead and throw Alisa on here. Because, yeah, she's, I would say, solidly high mid, but maybe not quite S tier, maybe between the two. Same thing, wall infinite, quite a few incredible strong tools. Yeah, see, this is where it starts falling apart. Alisa with Heihachi, yeah, probably about the same. I would feel bad to start changing it now. I would say Alisa, and once again, order doesn't matter, but in like the outliers, I'll go ahead and make it important. You know what? Maybe can I add another tier? Okay, yeah, let's go here. And I'll call it not quite S. And let's go ahead and throw him there. So Alisa, Armor King, Heihachi. That's a little bit more accurate. And hopefully this doesn't blow up my recording. That's probably a little bit better. Yeah, not quite S. Yeah, this looks good so far. Who else can we throw in not quite S? Well, actually, you know what? Let's throw an S in there. Zafina is still incredibly strong. The general evasiveness on her is insane. Damage potential is good. Pressure game is good. She has incredible strong neutral tools such as 4-4-4, 4-4-3+4. Wall stand 2 still being a high crushing option. That, well, not even just high crush, like mid evasion option. Hit confirmable wall stand 1-2. Of course, at tip top, wall stand 1-2 will get you blown up, so on and so forth. But man, she is very, very strong. Great power crush with back 3. great general evasive neutral options. Back 1+2, scary, terrifying wall ending or open field ender with a back 1 just frame 1+2. Very good. Yeah, Zafina is pretty damn good. I'm sure you know this, and I'm not telling anything that you probably don't know. But little things like Scarecrow, her standing stance with Power Crush on 4, is such a crazy change. Like, the dynamic of playing her in this game versus a game like Tekken Tag 2 is like night and day. Just these little changes to both the nerfing of the general movement, but at the same time, additions to like Power Crush stance and just general evasiveness is it's so weird. If you haven't played Tag 2 and you're like a Zafina main, I highly recommend just playing it for like an hour and just seeing like what they changed. There is so much to talk about. I can't do it justice. Not quite S tier. I think Bryan fits that bill. He has gotten some incredible buffs with the down forward, full crush down forward 2-1, I-13 Punisher, hit confirmable in certain situations, sway 2-4, hit confirmable in certain situations, little things like that. He's the god of -10. If your character doesn't have a good 10-frame Punisher, man, I feel bad for you playing against him, against Bryan. Because, man, like, so many -10s that are counter hit launchers, 4-3-4, down forward 2-3. Down 2-3. Talking about down forward 2-3, -13, but certain characters like Dragunov can't actually, punish it properly. So instead of getting a nice little 4-1 for, I think it's like 27 damage and +8, you are forced to do down forward 4 for like 14 damage +2. And you're essentially neutral. You're at like range 2, 2.5. It's like, okay. Little things like that. Like, obviously with this super strong wall game, you can argue he is close to God tier. But I would say because of the lack of a balance system, getting rid of the consistency, he's definitely harder to play, which is a great thing. Even things like Sway 3 no longer being a counter hit launcher like it was in Season 1, I think, or Season 2. I don't know. Maybe it was prior to that. It is great for balancing, but yeah, he's still a super solid character. Probably falls a little bit behind the new T7 style buffs, but he still needs to be talked about. He's definitely higher than mid tier. Okay, let's talk about let's see. Lidia. Lidia is meta defining, but is she quite god tier? I would say online, she for sure is god tier. And you know what? Let's do this. Let's go ahead let's go ahead and make another tier, since we have like 3 characters or 4 characters now. And let's call it what it is. Not quite god. I'd put Lidia in not quite god. And Jin, yeah, once again, he is old school meta defining, no longer, but he's still probably not quite god tier. That's probably a little bit more accurate. You can argue for Paul, so let me go ahead and throw Paul here, and we'll think about putting him there later. Yeah, Miguel. I would say Miguel is probably scarier than these 4. A well-played Miguel is very scary. He does have a few issues with, Sav 1, I think it is, or Sav back 1, I can't remember, being only like +1. But yeah, very nice hitboxes, good pressure game, invisible low chipping options. He loses to like, deep step right, his right, your opponent SSL. But at the same time, he has great tools to stop sidestep left. Sav 2 being a -9 buff that tracks his weak side. Down forward 4 being a knee that tracks his weak side. Forward 4 2 or 4-4 1+2, whatever it is. It's like you sleep against Miguel for like just a second, and all of a sudden you're losing. Not a lot of characters can say that. So I think S tier probably is pretty accurate. Miguel, super fun. Combo stability is not great when you go for max damage, but if you play him stably, yeah, he is easily upper mid tier. So I think S tier is probably pretty accurate for him. Let's go ahead and start filling out the bottom a little bit more. Anna is a character who is particularly scary until you understand her weaknesses. She has gotten like some significant T7 buffs, but she quickly falls off when you simply know how to sidestep left. One of the few characters in the game who can actually force a 50-50, like an effective 50-50, like similar to Kazuya, but at the same time doesn't quite have the safety of Kazuya does nowadays. Even a tool like FC forward 2 being minus 14, power crush. If, for instance, it would give her a better combo, I would probably put it a little bit higher. But just getting a chipping low hurts. Also, she has the issue where as soon as she loses momentum, she doesn't really have a particularly good way to gain it back. And she quickly falls off because she loses momentum, and that's kind of it. Same thing to like Katarina and Lars. She's probably 2 or 3 buffs away from being significantly stronger. You really can't not talk about downpour 2 being 15 frame. That's like a huge buff. But that really goes to show you how having these buffs is not enough in this game, especially. Obviously, hopefully T8 kind of tones things down. But who cares about like little buffs like that when you have a character like Lee, who has gotten buffs, like significant buffs, and then is part of the conversation, goes from a mid-tier, low mid-tier to an upper tier essentially overnight. Down 3 guaranteeing a combo. 1-3-3, the acid rain being guaranteed knockdown for like 25%. There's so much to talk about. Forward 3 being consistently I-15. The hitbox and up 4-4 being slightly improved. Down 2 being a counter hit launcher. Still having a easy peasy, safe hit confirmable I-11 standing 4. Back 4 having the back 4 HMS bug from Tekken Tag 2. There is not much to not like about this character. You can argue he is probably, depending on execution, who's going against, tier-wise, like matchup-wise, sorry, probably a little bit more S-tier. But no, I still think Lee is in the conversation for top 15. Very scary in the hands of someone who knows what they're doing. Speaking of very scary, of the hands of what they're doing, I would say Eliza is in that situation. Her buffs that she's received makes her terrifying. She's one of the few characters in the game who can go wall to wall on most stages. And it's not even like a situation of like, oh yeah, you need meter. And it's she generates meter so fast. Her meter game is scary. They have buffed like down 3 into EX QCB 1+2 being minus 13, minus 14. They have brought her into the 21st century. She's very much a T7 character now. Does she have issues with games, certain matchups? Sure. Is she mid-tier? I'm sorry about that. No, she's probably just right above mid-tier. Very strong character. Not much to talk about. Without meter, she's worse, but once again, she generates meters so quickly. And we have a character like Geese who generates meters slowly as God tier as well. Asuka. I think she's in the vein of if she had a few more buffs, she would be better. Thank God she doesn't have more buffs, though. Weird changes like 1-2-4 being minus 12, yet having insane pushback. One of the most annoying power crush in the game if you don't know how to deal with it. Luckily, she falls apart with that. No great way to stop sidestep right for your opponent, sidestep to her left. But yeah, a great damage potential, great frame traps, quite a few significantly scary invisible options. Of course, you guess right against her and she just gets blown up. But yeah, she's one of the few characters with a kick reversal that gives you a full launcher. Safe on block kick reversal. Compare her kick reversal to like tooth plus 3 by itself, where you can react to the high because she does a unique animation. It's like, if they made her kick reversal into a high, like I don't think we'd even be talking about her, period. But yeah, just a few buffs away from being super scary. I would say the buffs for Lili, I put her solidly mid tier. I can't honestly put her any higher than mid tier. 4-4 is nice. She has quite a few really strong tools. Obviously, one of the best sidesteps in the game. But beyond that, she has, I would say, particularly bad matchups that really hold her down. But yeah, if you're able to effectively sidestep, which, once again, if you're at the tip top, it shouldn't be a problem. And with her counter hit game and her safety nowadays, like forward 3 being, I think they made it like -4 down from like -8, like little things like that, which allow you to immediately sidestep, makes her scary. The addition of down back 2 or 1-2 being +3 into either BT or not, 4-4-4 into counter hit, guaranteeing BT 1-4, like weird changes that makes her terrifying. That then of course falls apart. But yeah, she is a strange character. I would say if her damage is a little bit higher, she probably would fit more into not quite S. But as it is right now, she probably went from like low mid to like solidly mid. Now, granted, with like this distribution, she's probably a little bit more low mid still, but she's still in the conversation of good characters. I would say similarly, Claudio's probably in this ballpark. I would say probably just above mid, about mid. Great buffs that he's received, great damage potential. His neutral game kind of falls apart because he is forced to take a few more inherent risks. But at the same time, he is still scary in the hands of someone who knows what he's doing. And again, the buffs to the Starburst game, I mean, like Wallstand 1-2 is such a great repertoire addition. Down 1-2, not requiring Starburst is great. Yeah, he's gotten some significant buffs that put him way better than what he used to be. I think the same thing can probably be said about Law. Law definitely has a scarier neutral game than like very similar, but tools like Dragon Hammer, and a down back 3, which is like +4S, I think it is, very, very scary. Just the fact that you have this like super long range I-14 launcher is terrifying with a tremendously good hitbox. I-11 counter hit tools. Thank God Law's damage is probably not higher, otherwise we would be talking about him all the time, I think. Obviously he falters against like god tiers per se, and isn't quite meta defining, but I think this is pretty fair. He's still scary in the hands of someone who knows what they're doing. Nina. I would say Nina's pretty mid tier. She is scary in the hands of someone with good control, but at the same time, like compare her tool set versus the higher tool sets, forced to take more risks. At the same time, is still kind of punishable on key options. She's fun. And the nice thing for even beginners is you don't particularly need to know how to do butterfly flaps because while running 3-4 is such a nice addition. Down forward 3-2 transitioning into the crouch dash as well is a nice addition. Execution requirements are lower, while her damage potential kinda is lower. The ability to full wall carry is great, but consider the fact that almost every single character now has great wall carry. If we're playing T7, everything was the same except for everyone had their original wall carry. Nina would probably be higher. She probably would be S tier because she's then getting full carry, which then allows her to do her incredibly strong wall game. But everyone has god tier carry anymore, so her defining features are completely absent. So who cares if you have great wall carry if your neutral game is a little bit weaker, and need effectively a wall to be particularly scary? For that reason alone, I think mid tier is probably pretty correct. Kazumi. Kazumi is a hard one. I'll go back to Kazumi. Hwoarang, I would say he's above mid tier, but that's about it. I think not quite S is probably correct. He is like a T7 character, but he falls apart, I think, against people who are higher than him. I would say even in this like even matchup, he can still get trounced. Damage potential is great. Neutral game is great, obviously. Great power crush game. But I honestly can't put him any higher than this. And then also you have other natural predators who hunt them. Kick parry on Asuka is incredible against him. Kick parry and punch parry for Fahkumram is incredible. In just the general evasiveness of like a Julia, the dragon punch of like a 2D character, he has a lot of natural predators, which I think kind of keeps him down. There was the argument, oh hey, if he was created in this game, people would be arguing that he's top tier. Maybe, but I think there's still too many predators hunting him. Lei, I would say prior to season 4, Lei would probably be B tier, maybe even bad tier. But the like improvements that he's received are pretty damn good. I would say just a tool like Snake 4-1 is tremendous. The ability to both keep pressure going as well as like damage potential, wall carry is pretty damn good. Also, the fact that he's a tricky character with like a scary both wall game as well as like a ground break game and neutral game is not to be understated. Thoroughly mid, he's probably a little bit closer to not quite S because his general evasiveness, like for instance, back 2 being like this hyper evasive option, forward 2 being evasive as well. Kind of weird decisions from Namco. I think mid is fair for him. The additions for S4, once again, are very, very good. Ganryu. I would say Ganryu is a hard one. Of this tier, I think Ganryu is definitely better than like all these characters. But I don't quite think he fits on S. But for that alone, like apples to apples, I would probably put Ganryu on S. His back 1+2 being like a decent 10. Also having some funky like evasiveness to it. Little changes here and there make him particularly scary. The 4 for 1+2 neutral clap is great. Transition into Zai is really strong. He's a much more solid character, and that's weird to say because like in older games he wasn't particularly bad. Hard to use, sure, but in this game he's easier to use while still maintaining his identity, which is kind of hard to say for a lot of the characters. I would say he's probably between these two tiers, but I would probably put him more S than not quite S. Josie. I think Josie, like Lei, has gotten significant buffs, and I'd probably put her middle of the road. Nothing particularly scary about her. She's incredibly weak against deep stepping, particularly sidestep right. If you don't read sidestep right, and your opponent does it, kind of similar to like Lars, you just lose. But at the same time, she has significantly stronger options than Lars in neutral. The addition of like 1+4 is kind of nice, but at the same time, unlike like Julia War Drum, 4 slide 2 1, it's like it wants to be a War Drum, but it just sucks. It's not quite that level. Yeah, there's not much to talk about. Great 10-frame Punisher, great 12-frame Punisher because it jails on block, but apart from that, a lot of these other characters just have like better options than Josie has. She has a great standing 4. That's probably about it. I really can't think of much more noteworthy stuff other than like down 4, but down 4 just has safety. That's all it has going for it. I think she falls apart. Yeah, I think it's fair. I think she falls apart against the other ones. Kazumi. I think Kazumi is just mostly fallen out of favor. I think the weird part of Kazumi is just her frame data. She is a little bit slower, and in a season 3, season 4 like buff world, where a lot of these characters now have like 15s, where they used to have 16s and 17s. Kazumi still kind of is lacking there. So while she was like significantly stronger in S1, like similar to like a Dragunov, because she's so middle of the road, she's fallen out of favor. I would say she's probably higher than mid. So I don't know if I can throw her in mid tier. I think this is probably accurate. Not quite S tier. So she's better than like average, but at the same time, she's kind of been left behind. Additions like Fly 3+4, granting like these super long carry variants, is interesting, but that's about it. There's not much else to kind of talk about with her, I believe. Yeah, yeah. She's scary, but obviously step right and neutral and just guard kind of blows up much of her game. Losing back to in season 2, obviously was a huge deal, like a blow to her. And Negan, um, I would think not quite S is probably pretty accurate for Negan. Um, he has a great wall stand game nowadays. Also, the addition of int down 2, even though it's right on the cusp of seeable, is nice because it adds in that low option that he needs. I would say Negan really improves when your opponent gets really antsy, but at the same time, a patient opponent kind of blows up Negan. If you keep your wits about you, like just simple sidesteps against down by 4, simple checks similar to like backlash on Hwoarang, you can treat int 1+2 in the same vein. Like, oh, I think you're going to do int 1+2, single jab, duck. What is he going to do? Down 2 doesn't high crush, so it forces him to use a tool like int down forward 2, but at the same time, int down forward 2 is nowhere near as evasive as an option like sav down forward 2. So he has like, he used to be like Miguel, but better, but like with a bat. But I think nowadays he's now the other way around. It's more of a hindrance compared to the buffs that like Miguel has received and a lot of other characters have received. Is he scary? Sure, he can be scary, but like I mentioned, if you're patient, there's not much he can do to really blow you up. So keep your wits about you and you'll do fine. So let's see. Anything else here? I think that's pretty fair for the god tier. And these are like the sub god tier. Paul, you can kind of make the argument up here. This is probably pretty accurate. Armor King. Yeah, just slightly above mid. Yeah, keep in mind, I would say this is like, you know what? Not quite S is not accurate. Let's say upper S or upper A. Upper A is a little bit more accurate. Yeah, there's nothing I particularly disagree with. I would say the bad tier is probably, unfortunately, a little bit interchangeable. You can argue that like Jack is bad, Leo is bad, Katarina is bad. But I think that's probably about accurate. Okay, you know what? Fuck it. Let's call him upper bad. That's probably a little bit more accurate. Yeah, and that's about it. If you have any questions, feel free to ask on Reddit, Twitch, YouTube, where I'll be posting this video. Otherwise, I will hopefully see you in T8 later on.